Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This evening, we're going to talk on the subject of marriage. Would you like to begin?
Thank you, yes. Mr. Branden, why, in your opinion, do so many marriages end in failure?
Well, I think there are a number of reasons for this. It has, of course, been said that people would not get divorced for such silly reasons if they hadn't gotten married for such silly reasons. And this is very often true. People very often, particularly young people, get married by whim, get married on an impulse, get married on the basis of a very superficial attraction without really knowing each other very well, without knowing whether or not they are really compatible. And in the case of young people, again, often they get married long before they are mature enough for any marriage to succeed. I think one of the commonest causes of divorce, and this is statistically borne out, is early marriages. Over 50% of all divorces occur between people who married before the age of 23. And I am very firmly of the conviction that early marriages are very, very dangerous, very, very undesirable, and that a man is very ill-advised to think of being married much before 28 or 30. I know that will shock a lot of people, but I think there are very good reasons to support that judgment, and I think that a woman is ill-advised to think of marriage much before 26 or 27. Because in our earlier years we are still growing, we are still becoming the people we are going to become, and what we want out of life, what we are, is not yet fully finalized within our personalities, and often the person who we might feel is right for us when we're 20 is impossibly wrong for us when we're 30. But that's only one factor. Another very important factor is that most people do not understand that marriage is something that they have to think about if they are to sustain it and keep it good. Most people accept the fact that if you want to succeed in your career or your profession or your work, it's going to take thought, it's going to take effort, it's going to take planning. But they very naively imagine that all they have to do is be in love and get married and they will live happily ever after. They don't realize that for two people to plan to live together for their whole life is a very difficult, challenging project or undertaking. Far more people make successes of their careers than make successes of their marriages, which tells us something very significant, that it's hard to make a marriage succeed, and that it never just happens by chance or by luck. Now, I don't refer to the many people who stay married legally, even though the marriage has died years earlier in fact. When I talk about a successful marriage, I mean a marriage in which the two people are not only still legally married, but actively happy to be married to each other. And the reason why most people don't attain that condition is because they never think in terms of asking themselves such questions on a conscious, verbal, conceptual level. What is marriage? Why do I want to get married? What do I expect to achieve or experience in the marriage? What is it going to be necessary for me to do to keep this marriage working and successful? They don't ask such questions because they succumb to the prevalent notion, the popular notion, the absurd notion that love is enough. Well, if I were ever to write a book on this subject, I would be strongly tempted to call it Love is Not Enough. Because while it's true that many people are not especially in love even when they get married, the real tragedy is that many people are. They really are in love when they get married. And they really want to have a good, happy life together. And within 1 year or 5 years, it's all gone, and usually they haven't the faintest idea why. And the most basic reason why, the commonest reason, is the fact that it never occurred to them that any thought or effort was in order, was vital, if they were to have the kind of marriage to which they aspired. I'll mention only one other factor that can be responsible very often for the failure of marriages, and that is people's own self-doubts, lack of self-confidence, personal defensiveness. If people have deep-seated lack of self-confidence, if they are very insecure and self-doubting, it's very unlikely that they are going to be able to function as an effective partner in a marriage. If they don't really like themselves, if they don't really trust themselves, if they don't really have confidence in themselves, if they don't have a strong, satisfying sense of personal identity, they are not going to be able, across time, to treat another human being properly. They're going to lean on their partner in improper ways. They're going to end up by being blind to their partner in many ways, blind to their partner's context or needs. They may become improperly dependent on their partner or exploitative toward their partner. They can make any number of mistakes which will be generated by their own insecurities and self-doubts. And if people want to get married, it's very important that they have achieved some good basic sense of personal security alone in the world as individuals, because you are not going to, no one is going to solve an inferiority complex through a marriage. One postscript to all of the foregoing. For all of the reasons which I have just spelled out, I believe that it is very inadvisable for people to marry if they have not spent, say, a good year living together first, and ironing out the wrinkles, shall we say, because the first year of marriage or living together is often rough. Adjustments have to be made, problems have to be ironed out, and if these problems only surface for the first time after the two people are married, sometimes one or both get a little bit panicky. Here I am trapped in a marriage, and my God, I never knew about this problem. Better to get the basic ones out of the way in advance of the marriage. So if you ask me for an ideal projection of a man-woman relationship, I would say, first they meet, of course, then they fall in love, then they have an affair, then they live together, and then they get married. Now, why do I say 3 stages there? Having an affair is radically different from living with a person. It's perfectly true that you learn a lot about a person when you have an affair. You learn an awful lot more when you live together. You learn things you do not necessarily find out during an affair.
In your work as a marriage counselor, what problems seem to cause the greatest friction between marital partners?
I would say unqualifiedly that the 3 commonest causes of trouble in a marriage are: 1, lack of communication; 2, lack of communication; 3, lack of communication. The fact that in marriages, because of the personal self-doubts, defenses, neurotic problems, or simple ignorance of the 2 parties involved, they do not know how to talk to each other. And I'm sure that theme is going to come up again in future questions that will be raised this evening. People do not know how to discuss problems. The worst problem people have is not generally the problem they think they have, but the fact that they don't know how to discuss the one they think they have sensibly. So, whether we're talking about the problem of one partner is insufficiently warm or affectionate, or there's a sexual conflict, or disputes over money, or whatever the problem may be, I don't even care at this point to get into details on that yet, because the basic problem is people are not open with each other. They're afraid to call a spade, and their fear can make them swing in one of 2 directions, both wrong. When there are problems, their fear can either cause them to withdraw, freeze, clam up, get closed, or, in a different kind of psychology, it will drive them to swing out, to become belligerent, hostile, offensive, mean, cruel, vicious. And in either case, the problem frightens them. Let's say they're hurt by something. They don't know how to say in a commonsensical, benevolent, open way, look, I want to discuss this with you because you really hurt me over this. They either freeze up or they start yelling and screaming, both of which are a mistake. They do not know how to discuss problems in a confident manner, assuming goodwill and good faith on the part of the partner. People do not, in another way of putting it, people do not approach the discussion of problems neither with sufficient openness nor with sufficient benevolence.